A forgotten world. A language silent for 15 centuries. Welcome to Cosmic Secrets.
For 15 centuries, silence. The great temples of Egypt stood mute, their walls, carved with thousands upon thousands of intricate symbols, spoke to no one. Kings whose names once thundered across empires were forgotten. Gods who had been worshipped for millennia became decorative mysteries. The hieroglyphs, those elegant birds, lyres, eyes, and serpents.
Click subscribe to Cosmic Secrets and come with me back to where the kings spoke to the stars.
Had become nothing more than beautiful noise. Scholars stared, they theorized, they failed. Some claimed these symbols were purely mystical, sacred codes meant only for priests. Others believed they were primitive pictures, incapable of expressing complex thought. The consensus: ancient Egypt had no real writing system, no true history independent of Greek and Roman influence. But what if they were all wrong? What if these symbols held the key to unlocking 6,000 years of human civilization? What if one man, a poor boy from provincial France, could do what generations of scholars could not? This is the story of Jean-François Champollion, a child prodigy who became obsessed, a political exile who risked everything, a genius who literally collapsed from the shock of his own discovery. This is the story of how one man cracked the code that changed history forever. The year is 1790. Revolutionary France is tearing itself apart. In the small, impoverished town of Figeac, a boy is born who will change the world, though no one knows it yet. Jean-François Champollion enters life with nothing. No wealth, no connections, no advantages. But he possesses something far more powerful, an extraordinary mind. The child prodigy, age 11. By age 11, young Champollion has already mastered languages that would baffle most adults. But one language in particular captures his imagination: Coptic. He devours every Coptic text he can find, memorizing vocabulary, dissecting grammar, understanding syntax. He doesn't know it yet, but he's forging the key that will unlock the past. Then comes 1801, the year that changes everything. Napoleon's Egyptian campaign has just ended. France is flooded with mysterious artifacts, statues, papyri, carved stones covered in those enigmatic hieroglyphs. In Grenoble, the young Champollion meets Joseph Fourier, a mathematician who had accompanied Napoleon to Egypt. Fourier shows the boy these ancient treasures, and something ignites. The child stares at the hieroglyphs, those silent, elegant symbols, and makes a declaration that would seem absurd coming from an 11-year-old. I will read these someday. I will decipher them. It's not childish fantasy, it's a VOW. By 1807, Champollion arrives in Paris, the intellectual heart of the world. He studies under Sylvestre de Sacy, one of Europe's greatest Orientalists, and he encounters the artifact that will define his life: the Rosetta Stone. Discovered in 1799 by Napoleon's soldiers, the Rosetta Stone is a slab of granodiorite bearing the same decree in 3 scripts: Greek at the bottom, Demotic Egyptian in the middle, and hieroglyphic at the top. It's a translator's dream, a cipher waiting to be broken. Champollion attacks the problem with ferocious intensity. He compares the Demotic script, a cursive form of Egyptian writing, with Coptic, the language he's been studying since childhood. He identifies 15 demotic characters that correspond to Coptic letters. It's a breakthrough, or it should be. But here, the story takes a dark turn. De Sacy, his own mentor, becomes jealous. The older scholar, who had himself tried and failed to decipher the scripts, sees the young genius surpassing him. He blocks Champollion's publication. He sows doubt about the young man's methods. The gates of academic success slam shut. Champollion returns to Grenoble, his progress stalled, his future uncertain. But his obsession only deepens. The next decade becomes Champollion's trial by fire. Napoleon's empire collapses. The Bourbon monarchy returns to power. And Champollion, who had supported Napoleon, finds himself marked as a political enemy. The royalists don't trust him. They watch him. They persecute him. In 1816, he loses his teaching position at Grenoble. Political exile follows. He's forced to return to Figeac, away from libraries, away from scholarly resources, away from the artifacts he needs. His work should have died there, in that provincial backwater. But obsession doesn't die easily. In hiding, Champollion does something extraordinary. He perfects his understanding of Coptic grammar. He masters every nuance, every irregular verb, every syntactic pattern. He's building a bridge across millennia, though he doesn't yet know where it will lead. And then he hears about Thomas Young, an English polymath, physician, physicist, scholar. Young has also been working on the hieroglyphs. Between 1814 and 1819, Young achieves something remarkable. He partially deciphers the name Ptolemy from the Rosetta Stone. He identifies several phonetic signs. He publishes his findings. The race is on. Champollion initially dismisses Young's work. Professional pride? National rivalry? Perhaps both. France and England are not just competing in politics and war. They're competing for intellectual dominance. Whoever cracks the hieroglyphic code will claim Egypt's history for their nation. But Young's progress forces Champollion to confront an uncomfortable truth. The English scholar is onto something. The hieroglyphs might not be purely symbolic. They might contain phonetic elements, actual sounds. Champollion doubles down. He proves that hieratic script, the cursive handwriting of ancient Egypt, is simply a flowing variation of hieroglyphic. The scripts aren't separate systems. They're the same language in different forms. The puzzle pieces are accumulating, but the picture remains incomplete. 1821. Champollion is unemployed, politically suspect, living on the edge of poverty. His health is deteriorating from stress and overwork. Most men would have given up. Not Champollion. He obtains copies of an obelisk from Philae, an island temple in Upper Egypt. This obelisk bears another cartouche, those distinctive oval enclosures that surround royal names. The Greek inscription identifies the name within Cleopatra. Now Champollion has two royal names with Greek translations, Ptolemy from the Rosetta Stone and Cleopatra from Philae. He lays them side by side. He compares symbol by symbol, and slowly, patterns emerge. The hieroglyphs aren't purely symbolic. They're not purely phonetic either. They're both. A sophisticated hybrid system combining sound-based characters with meaning-based signs. Some symbols represent sounds, like letters in an alphabet. Others represent entire concepts, or serve as determinatives, silent markers that clarify meaning. Over months of painstaking comparison, Champollion identifies 12 phonetic characters. A, I, K, L, M, O, P, R, S, T, building blocks of an ancient alphabet that's been hidden for 15 centuries. But he needs more. He needs proof that this system works for ancient Egyptian names, not just foreign Greek ones.
Then comes September 14th, 1822. A colleague sends Champollion copies of inscriptions from Abu Simbel.
the massive cliff temple carved by Ramses II. Among them is a cartouche containing symbols Champollion has never successfully read: a sun disk, an ibis, and 3 repeated signs. He stares at the symbols. His mind races through Coptic vocabulary, phonetic values, pattern recognition. The sun disk makes the sound RA. The ibis bird represents Thoth, the god of wisdom. In ancient Egyptian, that's pronounced Thut. The repeated signs make the sound MS or MES, the Coptic word meaning to give birth, to create. RA, Thut, MES, Thutmose, one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, a king who ruled 3,000 years ago. A purely Egyptian name from Egypt's golden age. Not a Greek ruler, not a Roman invader, but an ancient king.
Je tiens mon affaire. I've got it! I've got it! I'm sorry to inform you that the transaction didn't go as planned.
He faints dead away, unconscious for hours. When he awakens, he doesn't rest. He can't rest. For the next 8 days, Champollion works in a feverish trance. He analyzes cartouche after cartouche. He reads name after name. Rameses, Amenhotep, Sethi, kings whose existence had been reduced to Greek legends or biblical references, suddenly become real again. Their actual names readable for the first time in millennia. He discovers that the hieroglyphic system wasn't invented late. It existed in its full phonetic. Ideographic complexity from at least 460 BCE, as evidenced by the Kalis vase bearing Persian King Xerxes' name. The entire history of Egyptian writing spans 30 centuries of continuous use. The code is broken. September 27th, 1822. The Académie des Inscriptions et Belles-Lettres in Paris. The intellectual elite of France gather in their august chamber, expecting another routine scholarly presentation. Champollion stands before them. In his hands, the Lettre à Monsieur Dacier, a letter to the Academy's secretary outlining his discovery. He begins to read. He demonstrates how hieroglyphs represent both sounds and meanings. He reads ancient royal names that had been silent for over 1,000 years. He proves that this system works consistently across different time periods and contexts. The room is stunned. This isn't incremental progress. This is a revolution. Champollion hasn't just deciphered a few symbols, he's unlocked an entire civilization. The shocking claim. The hieroglyphs aren't mystical, aren't purely religious, aren't primitive. They're a sophisticated writing system capable of recording everything, from sacred rituals to mundane administrative records, from mythological texts to everyday correspondence. The inscriptions at Abu Simbel aren't mysterious priestly secrets. They're ancient journalism, recording royal birthdays, military campaigns, and political decrees. The implications are staggering. In 1824, Champollion publishes his Précis du système hiéroglyphique, a detailed exposition documenting over 450 words and comprehensive grammatical structures. It's not a theory, it's a code book. But controversy erupts. Thomas Young, the English rival, accuses Champollion of plagiarism, of stealing his insights without credit. The charge stings, partly because there's a grain of truth. Champollion did build on Young's phonetic discoveries. But Young had believed phonetics only applied to foreign names in late periods. Champollion proved the system was phonetic ideographic from its inception, used for native Egyptian words across 3 millennia. The academic world splits. Some hail Champollion as a genius, others question his methods, his nationalism, his conclusions. Religious scholars are particularly hostile because Champollion's translation reveals truths that shatter comfortable certainties. The hieroglyphic texts prove Egyptian civilization extends back at least 6,000 years before. Islam, roughly 4000 BCE or earlier. This directly contradicts the biblical timeline, which placed creation at approximately 4004 BCE. The earth itself, according to literal biblical interpretation, is only 6,000 years old. But here are Egyptian kings, Egyptian monuments, Egyptian texts, predating that supposed creation by millennia. The theological establishment panics. Champollion navigates this minefield carefully. He uses his chronological system to date the Dendera zodiac, a controversial ceiling carving some claimed was 15,000 years old. Champollion proves it's from the Roman period, thereby defending biblical chronology, in that one case. The Pope himself praises this as service to the Church. But the larger truth cannot be suppressed. Ancient Egypt's documented history spans thousands of years before biblical events. The timeline of human civilization must be rewritten. The scholarly consensus had been clear. Hieroglyphs might use phonetic signs for foreign names, Greek Ptolemies, Roman Caesars, but surely not for native Egyptian terms. Surely the ancient system was purely symbolic, purely conceptual. Wrong. Champollion reads Thutmose. He reads Ramesses. He reads names from Egypt's earliest dynasties, kings who ruled 3,000 years before Christ. The phonetic system isn't a late innovation borrowed from Mediterranean cultures. It's indigenous to Egypt, present from 460 BCE at the latest. The Kalis Vos with Xerxes' name, and likely far, far earlier. This demolishes the notion that Egypt lacked real writing, independent of outside influence. Egyptian civilization possessed sophisticated literacy from its earliest periods. The narrative of primitive Egypt learning to write from more advanced cultures collapses. For centuries, Europeans believed hieroglyphs were exclusively religious, mystical codes preserving priestly secrets and ritual knowledge. Surely such elaborate, beautiful writing wouldn't waste itself on mundane matters. The Rosetta Stone proves otherwise. Its hieroglyphic text records a political decree, tax exemptions for priests, royal birthday celebrations, administrative regulations. The magnificent temples at Abu Simbel chronicle military campaigns, construction projects, diplomatic marriages, the everyday business of empire. The hieroglyphs are ancient journalism, they're historical records. Egypt didn't just practice religion, it documented its political life, its wars, its economy, its laws, with the same elaborate script carved into temple walls. This revelation is shocking because it humanizes ancient Egypt. These aren't mystical philosopher kings guarding lost wisdom. These are administrators, warriors, politicians, people with recognizable concerns and ambitions, preserved in meticulous written records spanning 3 millennia. Champollion reads the name of Thoth, represented by the ibis bird symbol, and recognizes it from Coptic Christian texts written 1,500 years later. He identifies the verb mis, meaning to give birth, used identically in hieroglyphic inscriptions and contemporary Coptic. The implications are profound. Egyptian mythology isn't a dead curiosity. It's a living cultural system that survived, evolved, and continued across millennia. The gods worshipped in 3000 BCE were still recognized in 300 CE. The language spoken by pyramid builders was still comprehensible, albeit transformed, to Coptic monks. Champollion discovers determinatives, silent symbols that clarify meaning. A star symbol determinative indicates time-related words like hour. A seated god determinative marks divine names. These aren't primitive pictures. They're sophisticated grammatical markers showing a highly developed linguistic consciousness. Egyptian culture wasn't a brief flowering that died young. It was the longest continuously documented. Civilization in human history. 3,000 years of recognizable cultural continuity. Hieroglyphic, hieratic, demotic. Scholars like Young believed these were separate writing systems, developed independently for different purposes or time periods. Champollion proves they're variations of a single system. The same phonetic ideographic structure rendered in different visual styles. Hieroglyphic is the formal carved script. Hieratic is the cursive, handwritten version. Demotic is the highly abbreviated, shorthand evolution. But underneath? The same language, the same logic. He confirms this during his 1828 expedition, reading inscriptions spanning Egypt's entire history, from Old Kingdom pyramids to Ptolemaic temples. The system remains consistent across 3 millennia, from approximately 3000 BCE to 300 CE. This consistency is staggering. Imagine English remaining essentially unchanged from the time of ancient Babylon to the present day. That's the stability of Egyptian writing. It reveals a civilization of extraordinary cultural continuity, where scribes in Cleopatra's era could theoretically read texts carved during the age of the pyramids. Texts 2,500 years old by their time. These 5 revelations don't just expand historical knowledge, they overturn the foundational narratives about human civilization, chronology, and cultural development. By 1828, Champollion has achieved academic recognition. He's appointed curator of Egyptian collections at the Louvre. He's proven his system works on paper. But paper isn't enough. He needs to stand in Egypt itself. He needs to read the walls of temples. He needs to prove his decipherment works in the field, on the actual monuments carved 3,000 years ago. In 1828, Champollion leads a Franco-Italian expedition to Egypt. For 15 months, he travels the Nile. He visits Thebes, Karnak, Abu Simbel, the great monuments he's studied only through drawings and copies. And he reads them. Standing before temple walls, he translates inscriptions no one has understood for over a millennium. He confirms royal names, dates, historical events. Every inscription validates his system. Every text proves his method works. It's the triumph of his life, but it comes at a terrible price. The Egyptian climate ravages his already fragile health. Gout flares, fevers rack his body. The physical toll of traveling through desert heat, combined with years of stress and overwork, pushes him to the breaking point. He returns to France in 1829, already dying. For 3 more years, Champollion struggles to complete his work. He organizes the Louvre's Egyptian collection. He prepares comprehensive publications of his grammatical discoveries. He fights to ensure his life's work won't be lost, but his body fails him. In 1832, at age 41, Jean-François Champollion suffers a stroke. On March 4th, the man who gave voice to 15 centuries of silence falls silent himself. He dies having revolutionized human understanding of history. He dies having unlocked the secrets of an entire civilization. He dies having proven that one mind, One obsession, one unbreakable will can change the world forever. Champollion's death was not the end. It was the beginning. His decipherment transformed Egyptology from speculation into science. Thousands of texts became readable: religious hymns, medical treatises, mathematical problems, love poems, legal contracts, historical annals. An entire civilization, once reduced to Greek hearsay and biblical footnotes, could finally tell its own story in its own words. But perhaps the greatest legacy isn't in the past. It's in what Champollion's journey represents. He was poor. He was politically suspect. He faced institutional jealousy, national rivalry, religious opposition, and chronic illness. Every force arrayed against him, every reason to give up. He didn't. For 21 years, from that childhood vow in 1801 to that September collapse in 1822, he pursued a single, seemingly impossible goal. He mastered languages most scholars never heard of. He analyzed texts most experts declared undecipherable. He persisted when practical men would have quit. And on September 14th, 1822, when he read that single word, Thutmose, 15 centuries of silence ended. The hieroglyphs speak now. The kings have their names back. The gods are known again. The history of humanity is richer, deeper, longer than anyone imagined. All because one boy in provincial France looked at mysterious symbols and refused to accept that they would remain mysterious forever. Champollion didn't just crack a code. He proved that human knowledge has no permanent limits, that the forgotten can be remembered, that the impossible is just the not yet achieved. His story isn't just history, it's a challenge. What mysteries remain unsolved in our time? What codes still await their Champollion? What voices, silenced by time and circumstance, are waiting for someone stubborn enough, brilliant enough, obsessed enough to make them heard again? The hieroglyphs were silent for 1,500 years, until they weren't. Until one man refused to let them stay silent. This is the power of obsession, the power of persistence, the power of one mind against the weight of history. The hieroglyphs speak because Champollion would not stop listening.